Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 1,000 Mile Coffee. My name is David.
I'm Jason.
And on today's road trip, we're going to be talking about team driving versus solo driving. We have a special guest here today. We have Tom and we have Emilio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How y'all doing today?
Yeah, I'm Tom.
Glad you made that clarification.
Yeah.
Now these two are team drivers, and then that's me and David. David's done a little bit of teamwork for what, 2-3 months?
I did it for about 5 months.
5 months. Okay, I did it for like 3 days. So I don't know a lot about teaming. And my team driving really wasn't. It wasn't my choice. Mm-hmm. It was, hey, bud, we got a truck down, and we need you to pick this driver up and deliver that load for us. Yeah. And I said, okay. So, I don't know enough about teaming, and that's why we've asked y'all to come on the show so y'all can tell y'all's experiences to the new drivers who are looking at getting into trying to decide whether they want to do teamwork or solo work.
Yeah, well, I knew that at one point we decided we need to get a job. We were doing the paper route, and I told my wife, you can't make any money. That's for 14-year-olds. I told her I know how to make some money. I said, we can go in the trucking business, and that's where the money is. So that's what got us started back in the trucking business. And so we've been a team since 2013. And we started by hauling just what I call open freight, just as freight you pick up at the dock. And so we just started hauling open freight with a friend of mine, and we thought we was going to make some money, but it didn't work out as well. So we moved over to another company, and that helped us. And then from there, you had to be a team to haul arms, ammo, and explosives. So that's where we are today. We're hauling arms, ammo, and explosives all over the United States.
So they actually require team driving for that?
Yeah, you can't do solo with
We
arms,
haul
ammo.
exclusively for the military, and the arms, ammunition, and explosives is what we haul.
Gotcha.
And they do require a team driver.
I'm going to assume they really don't want that sitting in a truck stop overnight.
No, only
You're
yeah.
right about that.
Yeah, I would assume they really don't want that just sitting in the pilot truck stop next to a loaded tanker full of diesel fuel.
They do get concerned when they see .1 on the side of your truck, and
yeah.
So we have to.
I think I'd rather park next to a reefer.
So we have to park way out in the parking lot when we stop. Of course, we fuel. We run a gas truck. Right now we're out of tractor trailers, and we're in just a little box truck.
Okay.
And because 90% of the weight of the stuff that we haul is less than a couple thousand pounds. So we're down. We went from 18 wheels down to 4.
Hey,
But
as long
all
as
the
it
rules
works for
apply.
you.
Yeah, and all the rules apply. And so we enjoy doing that, and now we make decent money. So it's worth our while to stay in it. And we had to do that because we took on a couple young children to help them out. So that's what we've been doing.
Now, my question for y'all is: have y'all always been teaming, or have you done solo driving in the past?
I started out in the 70s as a solo driver, but then the boss wanted me to run some teamwork. So I ran some teamwork, and that was okay, but I wasn't crazy about it because the guy I had as a team, he liked to stop at all the restaurants and talk to the girls. And I'm one of them guys that like to get the load and get on with it and get it delivered and
Get down
another
the road.
one. Yeah, because you only get paid so much no matter how many days it takes to deliver it.
That's right. That's right.
So-
If those wheels ain't moving, you ain't making no
Right.
money.
I was more focused on getting the job done than I was stopping at restaurant and talking to the girls. So I told them I didn't want to do a lot of team driving unless they gave me another driver. So they gave me another driver, and that worked out pretty good.
All right. Well, what about you, Amelia? Have you ever done any other, like any solo work other than just
Heavens,
the team?
no.
No.
I was in banking for 45 years, retired, and got too involved in helping family, as a lot of people do. And I'm the one that picked up the paper route, so I had an elderly mom at home, and so that way I could work at night and help another niece, at the same time. and then I met this guy, and we got married, and he was helping me on the paper route. Well, I didn't pay him anything, except
Well, hey, you know what? You're married. You feed them.
no,
That's
we weren't
crazy.
married.
married yet.
Oh,
We
you
weren't
weren't married. Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
I got a half a hamburger.
I'd stop at McDonald's, and we'd give the guy a newspaper, and he'd give us some fresh made cookies, and I'd buy one of the big hamburgers and divide it with Tom. So he finally decided that, hey, I think I know a way we can make more money. So that's how we got into it. But I had never driven a truck. I had never driven commercially. So we had a problem. Well, how do you get your CDL? I think the company we work for requires a minimum of a B.
Yeah, the first truck company we worked for didn't. We just drove with our regular driver's license because it's a
So
small
I got
truck.
my year's experience driving for this company that didn't require the CDL. And then we got with the other company, and I didn't go to a school to learn to drive. He rented a Penske truck and said, let's go over to the Cabarrus Arena, and they got a big parking lot. So here we went.
Hey, at the end of the day, you got your license. That's
I
all
did.
that matters.
Well,
You,
in 1 week, I got her so she could back up to a dock and parallel park and shift the gears. And so we went down and got her license, and the rest was history. We got her B license, and she's in business.
There
Oh,
you
but
go.
he's skipping some of the good part.
I got to hear the good part.
Yeah, some of the good
Do
part.
tell,
is-
do tell.
I failed the test, and then I went back, failed it again, and I almost scared the lady to death that was in the truck with me. So we had to get to work, so I had to hurry up and get this thing mastered. So we went to Salisbury, I guess.
Salisbury, yeah.
Where they just test commercial drivers. And so this guy got in the truck with me, and I told him my story. He said, I've never seen anybody have 31 hits on their driving test. How could you do that back? I said, I don't know. So we took off, and he said, hey, I don't see what the problem is with your driving. So he took me on the little route, and then when he said, I'll tell you what, we're going back in, and if you can get back in this driver's lot where the examination office was without tearing the fence down, you've got your CDL. So that's my story about getting my CDL.
That's a pretty good story.
Third time's a charm, sounds like.
Hey, as long as, hey, like I said, at the end of the day, you got it. You know, I remember when I was 18, I went for my motorcycle endorsement,
Oh, yeah.
and I failed the written test. I had already, I went through the new beginners class, and so I didn't have to take a road test because
Yeah.
I'd already done that. And I failed a written test just because I misread a question. It was that simple. So it don't matter how many times it takes, as long as you get your license in the end, that's all that matters.
With us, it was also a problem of how many times we had to pay that rental fee for Penske.
Yeah, we all know that Penske ain't
It's not cheap.
Is not cheap.
But they had the biggest straight truck that I could get. And
Right.
That's why I wanted to get a Class B, because that's what the company we
They
drive for
require.
now require.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, when I started out, I started with a Class B. The company I worked for at the time, that's all they did was straight truck work, and I was the office manager. I wasn't even driving the trucks, but they had requested that I get one just in case. Sure, not a problem. And I took this. It was a friend of the family who let me borrow his straight truck, and I struggled. God Almighty, because the clutch was about wore out on it. It was. I got my license, but it wasn't. It wasn't pretty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, and this could be for either one of you who wants to answer it. For what little bit of time that I did teamwork, I had already been a solo driver at this point for about 3 years. I was used to being in the truck by myself, doing what I had to do with no issues. But my issue that I had with him, and it wasn't with him at all. He was a good driver, but bouncing in the bed down the road, trying to sleep. I could not sleep at all. Do y'all struggle with that at all, or is it just something you get used to?
Could I say one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not a problem if you don't mind getting airborne occasionally as you're sleeping.
Yeah, and it's the way some of these highways are. I believe that.
I always
See,
tell
I
her
wouldn't
that,
mind if I went airborne, but when I did teaming, the teammate I had, his problem was he had 2 women at home, one of which he had a kid with, the other one he was talking with. And his problem was he would set up his cell phone on the dash playing Netflix, and his
God.
other phone, he would have it sitting here texting back and forth between the 2 of them. And I'm sitting here in the back trying to sleep, and you about every 30 seconds you're hearing rumble strip, rumble strip, rumble strip. It wasn't bad if he got in a rhythm with it. I just felt it just rocked me to sleep. But the problem was like you sitting here hitting the rumble strip and hard brakes, everything else, and people wonder how I sleep so hard. I said, ride with him for a week, you'll figure out how to sleep.
yeah. Yeah, well, I know when she's driving, I always tell her that the way she hits the bumps, I'm off the bunk long enough I can do a flip and get on the other side.
Hey, that's pretty handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially somebody like me who twists and turns in their sleep. God, drive my wife crazy. She hates that.
So as far as team driving like that, I've got a full bunk in a little box truck. So, I mean, and we got a little hole in there where we go up through the attic and into the bunk. So
Gotcha.
it's pretty nice, and it got air and heat in it. So it makes it pretty nice.
Okay. Do you have any issues sleeping while he's driving?
I can sleep if you stand me up beside of a tree.
Lucky.
So I have no problem sleeping.
Yeah, I wish I could say that. I used to have no problem sleeping. I mean, we would go to.
What was it,
When
in
I
high
was-
school? You talked about falling asleep standing up.
Oh, I did that just to make a teacher mad. But no, when I was a kid, we would always go to Rockingham Raceway every weekend that the NASCAR ran, and my parents would lay out a blanket like a towel on that concrete bleachers, and I would just lay down and go to sleep during the race.
Yeah.
And I'm still a hard sleeper, but if somebody moves me, I wake up.
Yeah.
I can sleep through sounds and noises, but a movement, I'm awake.
Well, we learned because we struggled with, the requirements of logs and stuff, but we've given up, and we had different formulas for how to do our logs, and we still do manual logs in our truck, but we now drive 10 hours on, 10 hours off, and it's working a lot better for us. But I can tell you, as far as the team driving is concerned, our company, when we have our training, the predominant percentage of drivers for our company are husband and wife teams. I think that makes it easier, but now there are a few that are not, brothers or whatever, or just good friends, but most of them are husband and wife teams.
Yeah, that's every team driver I've talked to has always said, and he even told me that when you're teaming, you got to be with somebody you can get along with.
That's right.
You got to be someone you can get along with, you can trust fully. That was my problem during my teaming time. Was the person I was with. You can clearly tell by 2 cell phones. I wasn't the biggest fan of trusting him,
Yeah.
and it made for a lot of sleepless nights. But
Well, when you have team driving, I'm fortunate enough that when I say something, she does it, and that makes it a lot easier when you're doing team driving.
Well, that's your lie, and you can tell it how you want.
You can't see that I'm making big eyes over here.
We're well, not all of us, but we're all married here. We know the wife well. They make the rules, and
When you talk about team driving, some of the things you got to resolve is a team is, of course, there's a lot of things involved, and you got to pick different things that you do. Like when we start in the morning, I usually check the truck out, make sure everything's ready to go, and I get started with the logs and get all that stuff set so that once we start on the road, we can move down the road. We're not fall behind on doing our logs and those kind
Gotcha.
of things. And the other things is you got to be with somebody that's compatible. I mean, if you're not married, you want to pick somebody that you get along with and you can trade back and forth with as far as what each of our responsibilities are. And I think the biggest thing is the finances. How do you work the finances? you know.
As long as I get the big check, we're good.
Well,
Yeah.
you know the old saying,
What?
what's his is yours, and what's yours is
That's
yours.
true.
You know. So.
Oh yeah, I know that's what you hear.
The only thing he has state claim is the shirt on his back. That's about it.
Yeah, but
I'm not that hard on it.
You know, the gentleman that I teamed with, I met him actually through my son. My son and his stepson essentially go to school together, and they become real good friends. And that's how I met him. And he had the company he worked for had went under. They sold out, and you know, just one thing led to another. But we won't get into that. But he come to work over there with us, and he was the one I teamed with. Good driver, and you know, we laugh, we get along, had no issues. We was only, like I said, 3-4 days max. I just couldn't sleep, and the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, ain't no way I could do this. And maybe it's because I had been a solo driver for so long. That's all I know. Well, that's the only thing I've ever done. I've never teamed up until that point.
yeah,
Well, a big advantage, I guess, for obvious is an obvious advantage, but we have loads going all the way across country. We can go from Charleston, South Carolina to Lewis Clark in Washington State in how many hours?
it takes about 40 hours.
We just
somewhere
keep-
between 40 and 44 hours.
Keep going. I mean, we can really make some time, and we only drive about 62 to 65 miles an hour.
Yeah, that is the one.
Keep your fuel mileage down.
Yeah, that is the one positive of teaming is y'all can sit here and you
Yeah, we can just
make
keep
it
going.
over. Yeah, you can keep going. Versus the solo drivers, whereas y'all can actually make more money, get the loads there on time, which I know that's why when I first started, I was with Pam Transport. They required teaming for 6 months. Which I was against at the time, but looking back onto it now, I understand it for your newer drivers because it's not just you alone in a truck. You have somebody else there to help you out when you're first starting out. Let's say if you're first backing in somewhere, you can have him help guide you in, stuff like that. It helps you out when you're a first driver. You have someone else you can bounce the ideas off of.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because as a solo guy, it's you out there.
right. And you have to go, you don't have anybody to, like you say, to bounce out what you're going to do and when you're going to stop and how those kind of things are. And they're pretty strict on, the company you drive to is pretty strict on how much time you got to stay in the bunk. You know, and in other words, you can't sit down in the passenger seat during your time off. When you get out of the driver's seat, you got to go to the bunk and stay there so many hours before you can get up. And so you have to figure those things out. You have to make sure you understand. Now, if both of you own a business, it's a little easier to manage the money. But if like some team drivers drive for a company, and so that's not as complicated because the company pays each one of you, and they take out all the business expenses.
Right.
But when you own a truck, all that stuff comes out. So if one guy owns a truck and the other guy's just a driver, then you got to sit down and work out how the finances are supposed to go, because that's going to be the first thing that upsets the cart, if you want to say, and that's how you distribute the money.
Okay.
So, and then you always want to pick somebody that you can get along with and that kind of thing. And usually you can tell pretty quick if you got a problem with being able to get along and discuss things and have certain duties that each of you do to make it a little bit easier. Because there's some guys that let you do all of it, you know. And so, because I've been with teams that when I've been with drivers
I got
that
you.
you're supposed to do everything because you're the junior driver, you know. And I never looked at it that way. I always looked at it as just be fair.
And
just
then that's the only
distribute
thing you
stuff.
can do is distribute it equally.
And if you're starting to get a little edgy or get nervous and things aren't going right, you always say, well, just get in a bunk. You know, and that way you can go to bed, and when you get up, things are a little bit better. But you don't want to get in arguments and big knockdown, drag out stuff. When you see it going that direction, just go to
Change
the
the
bunk.
subject.
Yeah, change the subject. Could do something different. Separate
Change the
yourself.
subject, kind of. You got now. That's another thing. Since y'all ride in the truck together, do you ever get the point where you're sitting here, you're at each other's throats, and one of you just like, okay, I have to get out of this truck for 30 minutes before, or I'm going to wring your neck. Does it ever get to that point with the two of y'all?
That's what I was talking about. What you do is you decide it's time for me to go to bed. Because you can't stop for 30 minutes. I mean, you can, but it's pretty laid out for you how you drive and how much time you can spend on the side of the road. And with this company, when you drive for it, they want the wheels turning. And they tell you, you have to, if we drive 10 hours, so at the 5-hour point, we have to stop for 30 minutes. And we have to log that, and we have to walk for 30 minutes and then get back in the truck. Well, generally the other driver has to get up and sit in the seat because of what we haul. Somebody's got to be alive and awake in the passenger seat when the driver's walking, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of rules and regulations. You got to get this stuff figured out, and so that it's a smooth transition between the different things that you have to do to keep the road going, keep your tires moving down the road. And
now, let me ask you this, and this is just something I've always wondered exactly how it works, and I think this will help any new person who was going to go, who's thinking about going teaming. Mm-hmm. How often? Well, I guess it's a two-part question. Part one is how often do y'all get home?
So there are times when we're out for over a month.
Okay, so this brings me to the next question. Do y'all the way, how can I word this? The way you manage your clock, do you ever have to pull a 34-hour break out on the road? I mean, pulling 10 hours every day of on duty or drive time, that you've got to have a 34-hour break. Do y'all actually stop for a 34? Do you do a rolling 34?
Well, here's the way it works. When we cross the country and we get out and unload, we usually go to a motel and take a 24-hour break at least.
Okay.
All right, so that's how we do it before we get and pick up another load. And sometimes when we cross the country, we might have 2 or 3 loads on. So as we cross the country, we keep dropping loads
Gotcha.
until we get to the West Coast. And we still, almost all the time, if we have a long run, we'll go ahead and take a day break.
Okay, so that'll give you, with the day break plus a 10-hour, there's your 34.
Yeah.
To reset your clocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can say this, that even though I sleep well, you still don't rest as good as you do, obviously, in a bed.
Right.
So that's another reason we, get a motel room for a night or two.
And that makes sense. I mean, you got to stay safe. You need to stay rested up.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we're old.
we are.
We're
real old.
We need a lot of sleep.
I have told several people this, and I stand by it. Age is just a number. You're only as old as you feel. In my
I
case,
feel
I'm
pretty
120.
old. When you get this old, it ain't hard to feel this old. But see, now, before we were trying to catch up with our life, now we're just trying to keep up with our life.
I got you. Me personally, I don't think I could team, just because I'm so used to being by myself. That truck, that's I guess my sanctuary. I guess maybe to put it, that's where I can just shut everything off and think. The only person I actually even like having in my truck is my oldest son. When he comes, I love when he comes and rides with me. And hopefully he's going to do that a lot this summer.
Well, that's the biggest thing about as a team driver is to be in the bunk. So when you get out of the driver's seat, the thing to do is get your logs done and get the things done that you got to do, and then get up in the rack. Because you got to get your sleep, because that's what the log's saying you got to do.
Gotcha.
Okay, so as long as you do that, that puts you in the driver's seat by yourself. So you can dream about all kind of things and look around and enjoy yourself, because you don't have to carry on conversation. And that's what you're talking about. You like to just dream and do your own thing.
Yep,
and
that's right.
That's the way I am. And so sometimes you got to tell them, get in the bunk.
Well, David, you got any questions, anything to add in on this that I might have forgot?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
All right.
Which I know is kind of cutting us short on this segment, but...
Well, you know what? I think we've covered about everything we can cover on team driving. Have we left anything out, Amelia? Can you think of anything else?
No, this is not specific to team driving, but I had some of my old high school classmates. when we get together and they say, "What in the world are you doing?" and they don't believe. I mean, yeah, I was a banker for Pete's sake, and here I am driving a truck. And but some of them have said, "You're living my dream, seeing the country," because we see such beautiful stuff. You know how it is out there,
Exactly.
especially when you get off the interstates.
You know, and that's, you know, I talked with one of my friends who had made that same kind of comment. All the sights you see, well, you know, you don't see as much as you think you would.
Not if you're on I-40.
No, you just see them going by.
And there you go. You see them going by because you're under such a crunch time most times. It's not like you can just stop and take in the sights.
And another thing is, we don't have the opportunity because of our schedule. Like I still want to go see Mount Rushmore, but we're up there, but we don't have time to go see it, or the Grand Canyon. But we can see. We take in a few things occasionally, but normally it doesn't fit in with our schedule.
And going back to some of the things you got to resolve as team is who owns the radio, the air conditioning, and the heating system.
Well,
And
I
that
can already
comes under
answer
the
that.
driver. That's what I wanted to bring that up.
I'm very agreeable about that. As long as we're listening to Fox, I'm fine.
There you go. Well, I appreciate y'all coming on here today and giving us y'all's input and thought on teaming and your experiences. You know, we really do appreciate it.
Well, we
Glad to be
appreciate
here.
coming, and glad to be here and be able to discuss these things. But this is the way trucking is, a lot of fun, and don't take it too serious.
Oh no, it is. You know, it's something you just got to do. You know, when you're off duty. I love going in and sitting down. Well, of course, before the pandemic and all that, going into restaurants and sitting down and just listening to other drivers talk. It gets quite comical.
And that's another thing you want to do is we eat nothing but mom and pops. And so, because that's when I started in the trucking business in the 70s, that's the way it was. I can remember you go into your truck stops, they had restaurants and stuff, gravel driveways and all that kind of thing. You went in there and you poured your own coffee and sat down, the waitress was right there. She told you what the main dish was for that day, and they bring a platter out. And that's the way it was today. Now there's a lot of mom and pop restaurants out there that you can stop in, and that gives you the good food.
I was about to say
fast
some of
food.
the best places I've eaten are at the mom and pop truck stops. They're not.
Yes.
Some of the
at
places
major
that you look at, the outside of the building, it looks like, is that place even still open? But this is one place that me and him, a buddy of ours, told us about. The outside of the place, it looks like they're barely even open.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
run down, doesn't look all that fancy, but as soon as you walk in the door, brand new carpet on the floor,
Yeah.
the entire interior's done.
Well, see, now that's one of the things we do when we'll get off the interstate where there's a small town, and we'll drive. Since we drive a box truck, we can go into town and find a mom and pops in the downtown section, and we can just park in a regular parking space.
Well, there you go.
But when you have a tractor trailer, you're gonna have to find a place to put it.
Yeah, and that ain't easy.
That ain't
No, not
easy
really.
sometimes. But we enjoy doing the box truck, and we make the same amount of money that the tractor trailer driver does.
Well, that's the name of the game is money.
Yep.
Well, I've got another thing to say about driving in general. One of the things we learned in orientation was develop your relationships with these agents. And we've got 4 main agents throughout the country. And sometimes, depending on whatever part of the country is, that's who we call. And they keep us hopping. But
Yeah.
they call because they say you do a good job for us, and we want to use you again.
Yeah, we've got a couple brokers like that we use.
See, like right now, we pick up a load here in North Carolina and go to Fargo, North Dakota on Monday. Right now, the agent here in Charlotte has already called the agent that handles Minot, North Dakota, and those areas in there. So he already knows we're coming. So when we get there, usually before we even get to the offload point, we've got another load lined up to go pick up.
That's good. I know me personally, I can't stand to sit. I want to already know that I've got a load ready, so when I'm empty, I can get loaded and
Right,
turn and
that's
burn
what
and
we
get
do.
out of there. That's the way to do it. You got anything, David?
I believe that is it for everything.
Well, we enjoyed this, and thanks for inviting
Well,
us.
I'm glad y'all came on the show. I really am.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today here on 1,000 Mile Coffee. And as always,
Keep your greasy side down. And next trip, we're gonna continue this segment on things to survive your first year.